especially this time of year.
Good.
And ultimately, appreciate the opportunity to meet everybody, answer questions, give you a little background on what we've established with the NFL Alumni Academy.
All right, so guys, y'all are all pretty much ITL veterans. Most of y'all are. Y'all know kind of how this runs. If you want to put your question in the chat, that's fine. But given that we're running a little behind, if you want to just stop Dean and ask him a question, I'm going to kind of walk through this with him. I've got 9 questions here that I'm going to ask. And then afterwards, if questions haven't been answered, then we'll kind of field them as we go, kind of at the end. So Dean, why don't you first kind of start off and introduce the Alumni Academy as if we had never heard the term before, kind of give us a little bit of background there.
Well, having coached a long time in this league and talking about the needs of league and that it's a player-driven business. We looked at the NFL, the most popular sport in America, was the only professional sport that didn't have a developmental program. There was no minor league baseball, there was no G League basketball, there was no juniors hockey for the NFL. So ultimately, because of the high injury rates and the full collision nature of our game, we looked at how do we prepare the guys to be the next man up, right? How do we get those guys ready so that when they join a team during the course of the season, ultimately they were going to get be the best prepared and be able to contribute the most to that team. In the case of workouts and tryouts, we all know traditionally how it works and goes. After guys get cut, there's an injury on Sunday. The pro personnel director starts contacting agents off the board that they have ranked for that position. And then they invite guys to come in because they don't know what state of physical fitness and conditioning they're in. They don't know if any old injuries are reoccurring or if they're game ready and ready to go and kind of join the bottom of the roster in the practice squad and contribute. So we looked to solve that problem. And we approached the league office, met with Troy Vincent and the entire football operations team many years back, and we presented this game plan. And they liked it. They liked the attention to detail. They liked the fact that the NFL teams would utilize this service to be able to have instant feedback on players that are the next best players, the next top available free agents that were getting prepared, coached, mentored, and developed by all NFL guys. And that's where the NFL Alumni Academy was born. So, of course, our timing was a little off, just like the rest of the world. We launched our first season the year of COVID. And so we had to make, constant game plan adjustments to modify, to follow NFL, protocols with the pandemic, all the testing and all those things. But we pulled it off, and we successfully put players back on practice squads, put players back on active rosters, and essentially we're on our way towards becoming a development program that becomes second nature to all 32 of the teams, and ultimately we accomplished that in the first 2 seasons. We no longer have to explain what the NFL Alumni Academy is. But it is creating a habit, right? So we're getting general managers, pro directors, and personnel directors online, and now teams are assigning somebody to go to our NFL Alumni Academy web portal, and it's private. It's NFL teams only, and they can go in and watch the practice tape of everything we've done on the field that day and monitor the progress of these next top available free agents. So it does a couple of things. It keeps the player's name on the board and on the forefront of the pro director's mind on that free agent list, and then they can monitor it. So they know that the kid's willing to do the work, the kid's going and doing all the extra things above and beyond to prepare himself, and then ultimately we're working to make them a commensurate pro. Help them with all the other decision making, so they don't make a decision off the field that affects their 1 or 2 opportunities they may get to make it. in the league. So we try to give them a competitive advantage across the board. Whatever deficiency got the player cut, we look to improve that. And then we show by video and by coaches' reports that go daily, and they're available 24/7 to all 32 teams. They can monitor and track these guys, and they can look at intangibles, work ethic, and how they're doing in the meetings, and they have a great football IQ or they're improved. And we show all those components of the development of the player and the readiness of the player. So we get a kid and we make them NFL ready by coaching them, teaching them, mentoring, and then giving them the opportunity to stay on the board in the pro personnel rooms by having access, 24/7 access on that private portal. So now you as player representatives, when you call a team to communicate with all the relationships you've established over the years, now you can call and say, hey, my player so-and-so is at the academy. Go check it out. You see his progress. He's better than his college grades, and he's even better than he was 2 weeks ago in training camp. And now that gives you an opener and a straight, direct, concise line of communication with the teams, and they can instantly go check your player and look at his film, look at all the information and data. We have a page, and it has all the contact information for the player reps, all the agents, so that they can reach out, and then we make it convenient. We give them all the information, comparable data like combine measurables and all the different data, so that these young men have every opportunity to be seen, to be compared, and to be evaluated, and ultimately to get an opportunity. And so that's the competitive advantage that we've seen that our academy presents for players, and they become better football players. Quite frankly, we all want them to be on practice squad and making some money. Obviously, we all want them on the active roster and making you money, because that's how it works in this industry. And your role as player reps and agents is a critical one for the success of the whole ecosystem of pro football, because the constant connection, right? So your relationships, now you can add the academy as an ally. We're working together. This is a program that doesn't cost an agent ever any money. All right. It just helps improve the probability of success of the players or your clients. And so we work together, and you can communicate like you always do with the teams, your contacts at the different teams, and we will continue to coach and develop and mentor them. And I constantly am on the phone. Jeff Robinson is our director of player personnel. JR's got almost 30 years in the National Football League in pro personnel, and he takes the lead. And the two of us are constantly going to be in communication with teams. That's we're talking to pro directors. We're setting up. We're monitoring depth charts and rosters to see. And when we make recommendations, they go look at the film. They go look at the coaches' reports on the portal. And now that young man is moving himself up the grade sheet or up the rankings on the pro personnel depth chart or their board. And that's how they'll get invites for workouts. And knock on wood that we're past the COVID thing, because those 6-day, 14-day quarantines were killer for these young men. And because of COVID, your part of this ecosystem got even more challenging, because the talent pool is exponentially bigger with draft eligible and free agents, draft eligible players and free agent players, because of those extra years of COVID. And that is that's gonna bottleneck and make it a little tougher for you. So once again, in that regard, the timing is pretty good for the academy, because we provide efficient communication, developmental training and preparation, and we work in collaboration with the player agents. So that's kind of a quick and dirty, and I apologize for the delays on this. The technology piece wasn't my forte, even though I was involved with Catapult and Zebra and Next Gen Stats and all that, transitioning after coaching with the league. I certainly am not the tech guy, and so somehow my Zoom didn't work, even though I've done 1,000 of these things. over the course of the last 2 years, like everyone else on here. So with that, Neil, we can cover the history of the program. We started 2 years ago. We partnered up at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we practiced at the Tom Benson Stadium there at Canton, Ohio. We stayed at the Hilton Doubletree Hotel, and was quarantined. So you want to talk about a challenge during COVID? Try locking up a whole bunch of 20-something professional football players in a hotel and not letting them out. We couldn't even go out for dinner and all. It was a very intense atmosphere, and the guys did a great job of getting through it, and we got a lot of people back, playing in the league. Year 2 was, much smoother, and we were able to, land guys back in playing, and we've got guys, going from unknowns to, being activated and being on the 53. So our goal is to take that initial 2 years start of introducing this to the NFL teams and expand it. Because of COVID, we scaled everything down. We did 3 positions. We did offensive line, defensive line, and running backs the first 2 seasons. This year, we're growing. We're going to all 22, and we are moving a new location. We'll be in Texas. We're in Arlington, Texas, about 15 minutes south of DFW Airport. The housing will be for the players will be a Sheraton hotel, and it's 1 mile down the street to Choctaw Stadium. It's the old Texas Rangers Stadium. It's been reconfigured for football. It's next to the new Texas Rangers Stadium, and it's across the parking lot, from the Dallas Cowboys AT&T Stadium, right there in Arlington, Texas. That's where we'll be starting October 2nd. That's the report date for session 1. And how we're going to operate is we're going to operate as a team, and we're going to bring in both sides of the ball, and we'll run 3-week training camp sessions, and we're going to have 4 sessions here the next 12 weeks of the NFL season starting in October. And ultimately what that means is we're going to have a depth chart. So, for example, session 1 is filling up fast, and we've only been making invitations to the academy the last few days and over the weekend, and it's filling up fast. So we have stacked boards. We have X number of offensive linemen, defensive linemen, running backs, tight end. We have all the positions, and we stack it like a team. So we're going to have 4 inside backers and 12 defensive linemen and edge guys. We're going to have 8, 9 DBs, and we have a couple of variable slots depending on the timing of bringing in players. On the offensive side, we got 11 offensive linemen, 4 tight ends, a couple hybrids for H-back, fullbacks, and then 5 running backs and 8 wide receivers. And that's the format we'll do, and we'll do that 4 times over the course of the rest of the NFL season. And how that works is we invite a player, we contact you, the player agent, we extend the invitation based on the grading and evaluations that we've done, and we extend that invitation. We explain the program. The player accepts or doesn't. If they don't, we just do what a team does. We move to the next guy, and then if they do accept it, our director of football administration will send a packet of information. There'll be a DocuSign that we have the guys follow a code of conduct. There's waivers because they did a TV show, filmed it all last season. It's some sort of hybrid. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen the sizzle reel, but they've got 8 episodes. It's some sort of hybrid between Hard Knocks and Last Chance U. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to play out, but ultimately, we then get that documentation back. We do it for DocuSign for efficiency, so you can walk through it with your players. And then the only responsibility financially they have is for them to get to Arlington, Texas for the report date. We don't provide that transportation, but once they arrive, we take care of all the expenses. The other thing I always recommend is bring your own cleats and tennis shoes. Because you don't want to be breaking in brand new shoes when you have a 3-week training camp. You want to have your best performance from day one. So have your athletes bring their own footwear so they can perform optimally. We provide everything else. We have a chef that does 3 meals a day, Monday to Friday. Weekend meals are on the players, and they're on their own. They're still in the hotel. That's completely paid for. But weekends they're on their own. We have voluntary workouts on Saturday, nothing on Sunday, and Monday to Friday is in training camp focused and intense, and we keep them busy all day long. And we have a full-on recovery program with our athletic trainers. So we have hyperbaric oxygen chambers. We've got infrared beds, cupping, stim, all the athletic training pieces to teach them how to do proper recovery, keep their body in place of business and as healthy and as feeling good as you can be in the sport of football. We don't hit, we keep everybody healthy. All right. But we do teach them how to compete and practice with an NFL intensity in just t-shirts, all right, in shorts. So we do one-on-one competition, offensive line, defensive line, pass rush, one-on-one on the outside with wideouts and DBs. And then we do 7-on-7 sessions so that they can do that. There's a heavy influence of heavy dose of individual period work. So they're working technique. And then there's a whole bunch of classroom and video work so we can help them with their football IQ. A guy who can't go on the board and drop a formation is going to fall quickly off of the radar on NFL teams. We had a young guy that couldn't do that at all. 3 weeks into the program, we could call out a formation and fronts, and he could show us how to handle protections with all the different fronts himself at the board. At the beginning, and when he arrived, he couldn't even draw up, a traditional formation. So we work hard to improve their knowledge of the game. And because we don't know what team or scheme they're going to end up going to, we teach all of it. And we have multiple coaches at the different positions, so they get a different flavor. So we have our coaching staff, and then each session we'll bring in guest coaches that can give another NFL perspective for these young guys to learn from. In terms of where we're headed, this program, we have a 25-year agreement in place with the NFL Alumni Association to run the academy. This is year 3. So this program's got a long future and big plans. And it's designed to be another valuable part of the pro football ecosystem, just like your role is. And number one resource in the NFL is players, and we need to give them the best opportunity for success. Just as a coach does with his own roster, our academy coaching staffs take great pride in making improvements and helping these kids, and even using their personal contacts to open some doors with teams. So I can ramble on all day. I think if you want, we can do some targeted questions and get to some specifics.
Dean, let me ask you a few questions that I've already gotten from some of the people. So let's talk about the session. There will be 4. When are the dates for that? And I think you need to discuss the continuity. Let's say I'm registered for the first session. Do I roll over to the second one? Are they completely different sessions altogether? If I were to leave for a week and maybe I got cut, can I return if I'm still mid-session? How does all that work?
Great question. And the second question, as we know in the NFL, the second part of your question about going and making a squad and then getting cut, that happens every week, right? And we've all lived it and understand it. So we have, our program is a 3-week training camp focused intensity for the players, and then they graduate. Let me extend one other thing to complete that answer. We have a partnership this year that's new with the XFL. The XFL is returning in January, and they will be fielding 8 teams. They've got all their staffs put together. They got their personnel directors put together. They ran some showcases this offseason, and they're working with us because they're offering the academy graduates a guaranteed XFL contract so that they know that they're going to get paid to play pro football. If they don't make back to a roster, during the course of the NFL season, come January, they got a contract. They can go into that XFL training camp and compete for a frontline spot. So we prepare the academy graduates to have multiple layer options, because now they're going to get 10 games of game film that go, is in the pipeline. And what we did like about the XFL was there's a lot of NFL leadership at the top of that league, and they've put a lot of thought process in. So they have a very complementary schedule. Their calendar aligns with the NFL calendar. So they'll start training camp in January during playoffs. They'll start their games in February. They'll finish in May, so that the players that play in the XFL get those game experiences, get that game film. But then they also their season is over in time that they can join an NFL mini camp. They can join NFL OTAs and elevate their chances to make the 90-man roster for next year's training camp. So that partnership with the XFL is a unique twist. To the second part of your question, Neil, what happens if a kid comes in and they're at the academy for a week and then signs with the team? That's great. That's the goal for everybody involved. And if that is the case, congratulations. If they haven't completed, the academy, their time there is prorated by the week, right? So the payback on the tuition is prorated by the week if they get cut. So they go up for a week, they play, the veteran comes off IR, they get cut. We bring them back so they have the opportunity to graduate the academy, get the extra film time for the NFL teams, get the extra reps, the extra coaching, and all that opportunity, because when they're in our academy, they get all the first line reps. They take them all, because that's why we schedule the depth chart the way we do. So they're going to come back and they're going to complete that. Then we hand them that graduation slip, which is the XFL contract, to give them that 10-game plus opportunity for more film in the spring. So that's kind of the parallel there in terms of our relationship with the XFL, and then how that helps be that second tier of opportunity for the player.
Okay. My understanding, Dean, was if you participated in that fourth session, that one gave you the eligibility for the XFL player pool. Is it true of all four sessions?
All four.
Okay. And this puts you in the pool. It doesn't guarantee you a job with an XFL team. It just makes you available for the draft. Is that correct?
No. I'm glad you asked that specifically. You graduate the academy, you are going to XFL training camp.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We won't tell you. We don't know what team you'll be on, but you will be in the XFL training camp. They're going to run a series of drafts, and I'll let the XFL leadership, speak to the details of how they're doing their drafts and things. But no, the answer is, when you graduate the academy, you have virtually a contract, and you will be going to XFL training camp in January, unless you sign with the team. And that's everybody's goal.
Sure.
So,
okay. And what are the dates for the sessions, Dean?
Session 1 is October 2nd is the report date. That's a Sunday. And then October 3rd through the 21st is session 1. So those 3 weeks. That ends. And then session 2 report date is that Sunday, October 23rd. And so from the 24th to November 11th, that's session 2. Session 3 then reports on Sunday, the November 13th, and then it goes from the 14th into December 2nd. All right, then the final session, session 4, is December 4th, and that goes right up to the 23rd. So their travel day then gets them back, in the day before on Christmas Eve.
Okay, all right. Now let's really discuss tuition, Dean. How much does it cost to attend? How is that paid for, et cetera, et cetera?
You got it. So it doesn't cost them anything to attend. The out-of-pocket expenses travel to and from Arlington, Texas during those 3 weeks, and then whatever extra food they eat at night or on the weekends, right? Everything else is paid for, including the supplements we supply. We have Dr. Rob Wildman, and he customizes the supplement regime for the goals of the player. If they need to gain weight, lean up, lose weight, whatever the purpose of their for their position and for their goals, he customizes that and aligns with the chef that prepares the 3 meals a day, Monday to Friday, for the players. So we have breaks throughout the course of practice for smoothies, snacks, in addition to classroom time, video time, and then some life skills built in there, too, during the course of the day. All the meals are prepared by a chef and served. And again, that was a challenge during COVID. No longer do we worry about that because we are able to put in the buffet style. We had to have everything boxed and delivered to rooms, previously because we couldn't gather. So now we're back to some normalcy and we're able to utilize our chef again. The cost of the program is only when a player makes it. So our program, like I said, we have a long play here. Our goals are to supply the best available players to the NFL teams and to provide the most opportunities to these young free agent players. And ultimately, how we get paid or how the program gets paid for is, I mentioned we had a little TV show. There's a revenue source, but also they pay when they get paid. So if a young man goes back and signs with the practice squad, he pays his tuition back. I call it a scholarship that turns into a student loan. All right. But they only pay back the student loan when they're employed. Right. And then they're employed by a pro football team getting paid. Now, on a practice squad situation, when a guy goes to a team and gets on, he stays on for 2 or 3 weeks, and then there's a change and he gets cut and let go, that we hit the pause button. So they only make a payment based on their time that they're getting paid on practice squad or an active roster. And so how that would work, and again, we do our formulas to be player friendly. So our formula is take that practice squad, weekly check in the net, and 30% of the net would be the payment, to offset the tuition with the cost of the academy. And then they pay that when they're getting paid. And if they're cut or injured, then we hit the pause button. And there's no interest and things on the money. It's designed to absolutely make it player friendly. We're not trying to gouge these young guys. There's no point of ever having debt. If they don't make it, they never pay. If they, so if they make an active roster, it's the same program. It's 30% of their net to pay off, that total amount. So they're only paying if they're making practice squad or active roster, and they only pay the week that they get paid. They make a payment, and we do it so that 70% of their money ideally goes in their bank. That's your guys' guidance area, not ours. And then they make a payment with that other one to offset the academy amounts.
Is it 30% for as long as they stay on the roster through week 18, Dean? Or
it's only until they pay the academy tuition.
Which is what? What is that number?
$21,000.
Okay.
All right. So they'll just make payments weekly only when they get paid. Okay. All right. And we hit the pause button, and it's been real effective. And guys have, been up and down on rosters. And so, we're not making them pay when they're not in a position to do so. And when we do, we structure it so it's coming out of the net, because, every state and every team is different on how they pay. And so we do it based on a formula instead of a fixed payment amount.
Okay. Now, let's say I'm in session 1 and I've stayed in shape and I don't get signed until week 18. Does that mean I'm paying a $21,000 balloon payment in that last week, or how does that work?
Not at all. No, you make one payment per you getting paid. Okay. So what would happen is you'd have a $21,000 tuition. You make it, you make a payment, which is 30% of the net. And so a couple grand, and then that balance is reduced. So let's call it $2,000. That balance is reduced to 19. Okay. And then that's the off season. We're floating that. And this has happened. We've been around a couple of years now. So guys have got on rosters late in the season and made some payments. But the good news is we also offer, training with our program and Chip Smith and our performance coaches throughout the off season for academy grads, and that we don't charge for the training. And they have gone on and made active rosters and been real prepared, that following training camp. So we've had that exact case. So a guy went on practice squad in December, made 2 payments, and then got activated. And now he's paying, the active rate. And that'll be your next question. So I'll answer it right now. Active roster rate is 34. So 21 and 34 are the 2 numbers as far as payback. And it's only when you're getting paid. So if a guy goes up to active, he'll make 1 payment out of 30% of the net towards that 34. And that's what happened. The practice squad guy went up, and then he made a couple of payments in the fall, and he's easy, he's balanced to 0, and it's all good. And there's no carryover. There's no charges. If they go give up football, get married, quit, don't play anymore, we take that risk through our program, because again, that's the nice thing. When you're doing combine prep and training, you're all paying in advance. Here we're paying with the success rate, and we're doing that for the purpose of expanding, growing the program to do this thing for the long term. This is a paradigm shift for how the NFL will continue to do their player development.
Are you only taking rookies, Dean?
No, we've resurrected a couple careers. Okay. We've had guys who were drafted, invested veterans that, got caught, in the numbers game, or what I call the NFL middle class, where they were too expensive. And so they got released because of numbers or whatnot. But we had several guys that we brought back in, and then they went on and had success, made it back to rosters. Similar case, one guy signed on late in the season, practice squad, got him back in the door. He started and played all 17 last fall, and then last year in November, December, we had guys that were in the academy on Wednesday and Thursday, signed with teams and were activated and played on Sunday and got in the stats book, So we've had stories of all levels. Primarily, our players are practice squad eligible, the younger group, but ultimately we don't have a hard line in the sand. And to be honest, and I can share this because we all deal with the different ages of these young men. I like having a couple veterans on each side of the ball because they tighten up the locker room because they've lived the experience and they're hungry to get back. They've had real game checks, and they want to get that back and take care of their families and all those things. And so they keep some of the younger guys in line who are just coming out of college and maybe still feel a little entitled. And so it helps internally setting our culture to have a couple veteran guys that have been there, tasted the big time, and know how hard it is to get back. And then they impair on the young guys that this opportunity has never been around before. This is new. You guys take full advantage of this because they didn't have it, when they were a rookie or whatnot. So, and they know how hard it is to get back in. So ultimately we've had success with some vets that still can play, but ultimately got caught in the wash. And so yeah, there's a balance. There's no hard line in the sand, but the majority of our players are going to be that younger, 0 experience to 2-3 years.
Okay. Now, what if an agent wants to apply a client? And I mean, where would he do that? How would he go about that? And how long does the application process take, Dean?
We grade players, JR's on the call here. He's our personnel director and works with the whole staff, and we grade and compare and rank guys every day, every single day. So my recommendation to everyone on this call tonight is if you have players that you want us to evaluate, now there's a chance we already have, especially if they were in a camp, because we've been through most of the guys who are in camps. Please send us your your players with their basic information, name, data, all their contact info, and their kind of their mini football bio, where they were last with the pro team, college, other multiple colleges, because now these kids are changing. So we can track down and get the appropriate tape for evaluation. If you have some tape and highlight links, send those to, and send them to Jeff Robinson and myself. And Neil has our information, and he can share that with everyone. I'll just tell you right now, our address is pretty easy, and it's kind of unique, so you'll probably remember it. It's my first name, Dean, DEAN, at NFL Alumni .academy. So not .com, .org, not info. It's NFL Alumni .academy. And Jeff Robinson, our player personnel director, is his initials, JR at NFL Alumni .academy. Okay. And so it's easy to remember, short and sweet on the front side. And send us your list of players. We're constantly doing it. I probably had a dozen agents email me just today, and we had many of those players graded. Several got invitations immediately, because of where we had them ranked on the board, and started to fill in the slots. And when I say fill in the slots, this is a printout. You can't really tell what this is, but this is just a color coded on what available slots we have. So session 1 is filling up quickly. And we're already scheduling into session 2 at several positions because of they're full. We've filled up the roster. So please, if you do have players that you would want us to give a legitimate consideration, send us as soon as possible. And we'll communicate with you, both email, calls and/or text, and we're going to work together with you to get, the players that we invite, get them in the best position for their own success. And so, please send us your list of players with as much information as you can pack in to make it efficient for us to go through the grading process and get them on the board for a first wave invitation, second or third. And so, yeah, I highly recommend doing that, because we've been really well received this year. Agents that had success with us the first 2 years were reaching out, proactively, because they knew about the academy and they'd had great, success with it. And they had some, talented players that were on the roster. And then we're grading out guys on the cut list. So that's our main pool of talent. But there's always that outlier, and I'll give you an example. Came out of Eastern Kentucky University. Lamont Smith was his agent. Aaron Patrick is his name. He's a big, long, undersized edge player. And he came into the academy at 240. Now, remember, during COVID, we had the guys longer than 3 weeks, longer period of time. But after 6 weeks, with the supplements and the intense work pace we went at, he bumped himself up to 261. His bend was better. He learned from Chuck Smith a bunch of pass rush moves and counter moves, and he learned from all our coaching staff and applied that. And here's a kid out of Eastern Kentucky that wasn't on the radar. A couple of scouts knew him because he was a star at that school, but he didn't have a pro day, wasn't a combine guy. And I talked it through with 2 different personnel guys on teams. They liked him, but they don't have time to develop guys, right? So we brought him in. 6 weeks later, he signs. He signs with Jacksonville Jaguars. Made their practice squad to finish up that season, 2020. Came out, worked out with Chip and our off-season program, went in, crushed it in training camp, was activated to Jacksonville. And in week 2, they tried to slide him through. Denver snatched him up because they'd seen him on the portal. They knew his name. They were tracking him. And all of a sudden, they snatched him up. He's been active on the 53 ever since with the Broncos. So that's a good case in point of an example of a young guy and how the program worked, and then goes back to that example, Neil, of straddling seasons, right? So it crosses over into the next season. But anyway, what other questions would you like to? You're driving the car good, Neil. We'll get some answers and if folks have other questions, fire away.
Dean, what percentage of the players that you've taken in the first 2 years were not in camps that year? I mean, is there any chance for a kid that came in that maybe just went to rookie mini and didn't sign would still be someone you'd consider?
The answer is yes. That example I just gave you was a guy who wasn't in camp, right? And we didn't even bring him in until November, right? The first year. The answer is yes. Percentage-wise, it's a heavy percentage of guys that were in training camp because they already are evaluated and are mostly the next best guys. But there are outliers, so we don't overlook or not evaluate any young people. There was a kid at great running back at HBCU school, didn't have any notoriety on the national level, and only a handful of guys had seen him play, and no pro days, and because of COVID couldn't go to any big school pro days. So he came in and went through the paces and got on the radar, got workouts, and so we do have those, but the majority of the guys, 80%, 80 plus, are probably were in somebody's camp. If you did a rookie mini camp and whatnot, or you were on IR the year before, we're going to take a look at and get a barometer on guys who have injury settlements or had previously been on IR. We just look to make sure they're healthy. So our whole program, we're not a rehab program, we're a developmental program. So if a guy is hurt, we want them to be fully healthy. So when they come in, they're competing, and we're elevating their game instead of just getting back to wellness. Mm-hmm. So,
Dean, about what percentage of people that have come through the program have either gotten PS or 53 that year? 20%?
Yeah, probably. The first year we were pushing a boulder uphill for a lot of reasons, COVID included. And that was probably 20%. And then last year was probably between 20 and 30.
Okay.
And that's, limited because we had 3 positions. Now, we anticipated it'll be higher for several reasons. One, teams, the awareness factor is high. I would go down. I was talking to John Lynch at the 49ers, and he had not heard of the NFL Academy. We were at the Senior Bowl, and yet his personnel department, Martin Mayhew, who's now the GM in Washington, had signed one of our players and brought him in, and he was on P squad the whole year with the Niners. And then the next year they brought in a couple of our guys, and one of our linemen, was on the roster with the Niners throughout the season. So, and one of our backs, went in and got a workout. He didn't sign, but then the next year I see John, and he's like, "Hey, that I get it. The academy's good." This year I was out at Niners practice, and he was asking me, "Oh, you're not going to be in Canton." So he knew all about us now. "Oh, you're moving from Canton down to Texas, okay?" And warm weather and facilities and all those things. So so the awareness level has gone up, and the use by teams has gone up. Teams are starting to assign a person in their personnel department to track players. So they can, use that information like they do all information to, improve their rankings on their own boards, because everybody grades guys different.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dean, if a player goes through the academy, doesn't get PS or 53, is he obligated to go to the XFL?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
He
doesn't have to cover his balance.
He gets the opportunity. You know?
Right. Okay. Okay, I got you. That's one of the questions we got. Okay. Guys, what questions do y'all have? If you've got one, just unmute and fire away to Dean.
If a player is invited to week 1 or the first 3 weeks of camp, will he be eligible to enter into this upcoming XFL season?
You come to our academy for a week or
session 1 of NFL Alumni Academy.
Absolutely. We have a partnership with the XFL, so they are not only eligible, they'll graduate with a contract.
Thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, I think everyone who participates in any of the 4 sessions gets an XFL contract. Is that correct, Dean?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just wondering, with the timing being so prevalent right now.
Yeah. Timing for the XFL, you mean, or?
Yeah, so the draft pool is going to happen in November. I think you guys mentioned your first camp is in October.
Yeah, we have 2 camps that start in October, the 3rd and the 23rd, and one that starts before their draft in November. And know that they'll be on the field evaluating players all 4 sessions. Because remember, this is year 1 again, right? The XFL's been around. This is year 1 of the new XFL. So they're filling their entire roster. You know, if you go through the 4 sessions, we're only going to help them with, what we believe will be the better, the top of their depth chart. But they're still going to have other players that they'll sign. But our players are going to be on the NFL radar from day 1 that they come to the academy, and stay on that. And we leave up their web portal for 18 months. So, and that helped last year in the offseason, getting some guys into OTAs, which allowed them to make it to a 90-man going into training camp. So, because teams, again, it's knowledge and access to information. We make it simple and easy because we come from there, right? We know what the NFL decision makers are looking for, and we try to provide it for them and make it simple for them so that it's useful. And by doing that, we get these young guys opportunities or improve their probability, if you will. There's no guarantees on anything, but we improve the probability of them being on everybody's board or awareness level.
Dean, what if a player applies, an agent sends his information in, and you say, okay, we want you? Could he opt to say, you know what, I'd rather wait till session 3, or is he immediately placed in the next available session that he's eligible for?
No, we, again, this is an invitation by us, but it's an acceptance by the player. And so we've already moved some players into session 2 and even 4 for their personal reasons, right? And so if we're going to extend an invitation and we have a slot, we're going to give you the one that it works, optimally for you, and to Daniel's, question about the XFL, everybody that goes through the academy will be in the XFL camp if they want to, because we give them that guarantee. And so whether they're drafted or not, they're gonna be, because again, I got to let the XFL leadership talk to how they're going to go through their process, but they're not going to be doing that draft in November. Is not a wholesale top to bottom fill all your rosters draft, because there's still another month and a half of NFL season going on, and so they're going to have a series of player acquisitions. I think the first one is that one in November, and then because we work with the XFL leadership on their personnel, that everybody that comes through, the reason that we can hand them that contract opportunity is because we've all mutually agreed on the grading. So when we invite a player, he's already approved and will be getting a contract for the XFL if he doesn't make it back into the league.
Okay. What else, guys?
Hey, Neil, I got a question. If we have a player that went to rookie minicamp and then signed with the USFL halfway through the season, and they currently have an active contract, their option was picked up, are they eligible?
So that's the one unique case, right? The USFL has, like, some of the players had options for second years, like you're suggesting is the case for this young guy, that he would not be on our first wave of opportunities just because of our relationship with the XFL. But that doesn't mean he won't be invited, because we're still pressing. And if we look and feel like he should be on an NFL roster, that could be an extended invite for that. But it wouldn't be a priority if they're holding a USFL contract because of the dynamic with the XFL, because they're affording us the ability to hand that contract over. So we're honoring that relationship. But again, last year with the USFL, I met with Daryl Johnson and his staff, and we had 19 players from the academy that had not signed back to NFL teams that played in USFL. A couple player of the weeks, a couple of them made the all USFL team. So we have very good familiarity with that league, but ultimately our partnership with the XFL puts anybody holding that contract into the second wave.
Thank you.
Hey, Dean, I got a quick question. What's the typical time frame of evaluating a player? Let's say I send you film and some information on one of my clients. How long would you guys typically take to evaluate that?
Well, it's a two-part answer. One, we have a lot of guys pre-evaluated and graded. That that happened to me today. A player that came in, I liked him, and then I cross-checked him with JR, and he liked him and had grades on him, and I turned around and extended the invitation to that player's agent today. I mean, same day. All right, so it can be like that if we pre-graded the guy. Otherwise, we do our due diligence, but it's going to be a matter of a day or two, maybe three, depending on timing or the rush of evals that we don't have pre-done. But we will make it as efficient as possible, because, in this league, it changes like a second, right? I mean, I got asked that when I was coaching. Oh man, that's a lot of pressure. Is it like year to year? I said, it's week to week. I mean, you do something wrong, you might not be there next week. And we know how it works with the players, especially the bottom of the roster players. They're up and down on rosters. And the guys that persevere and win those battles, sometimes will stick and get that, longer career and get to a second contract and so forth. So our goal is to help those kids have a competitive advantage so that they can win the job and then have enough, good decision-making and references and support from you and like our coaching staff, so that they can sustain a career. So win the job and then keep it, because we created some good habits for them.
Okay, thank you. And then one other quick question. When are you guys looking to fill all roster spots for all 4 sessions?
Today. we just started this last, like I said, this past week, started reaching out to some of our players that were graded with invitation grades. And JR and I are both really pleased at the positive response. And like I said, many agents that knew of us over the last couple of years reached out and we tracked guys. And then we've been monitoring the waiver wire since day one of camp. So we've got thousands of names because of all the up and down transactions, thousands of names that we've cross-checked and worked. And then we've also got approval from the XFL so we can offer those contracts. So we're constantly doing it. And so to answer your question, we're going to work to fill them every day going forward. But we also know, like, running backs were full and a guy signed, and then I extended the invitation to the next man up, right? And so that'll change, and guys will sign, guys will opt out, and we'll just fill in with the next best players that we have on our roster. So that's why we say, send us your players so we can get them evaluated and react quicker. And it's in the best interest of the young guy to be ready to go. Right. We had a kid lose a workout because at the academy, I mandated the vaccines for year 2, and he had his vaccines, and we took the photograph of it, but one of the teams needed the physical hard card. And so by the time he was able to get that from home base, overnighted up to Canton, Ohio, the team signed somebody else. We had a guy in the NFL's the NFL. We had guys, going to workouts, and on the drive to the airport, the team called and said they went a different direction. So we all know how that is. You guys have all your own stories from players. But so it's a day-to-day, minute-to-minute, hour-by-hour transition. We're constantly adjusting our board, and that's why, my answer is send us the guys that you believe we should evaluate. And we appreciate you having a little, understanding that the talent pool is huge right now. You guys are in a tough spot in your part of the football business because there's so many. It's a saturated market of players. For us, it's a bigger group to choose from, but that's that many more evaluations to compare. So, if you think that this is a good path for one of your clients, send us to us, and we'll work together and get it graded, and we'll shoot you straight. We tell you which guys we don't believe are going to make it, and you can, agree or not. But then we tell you who we believe will make it, and then you and that player, your client, sit down, decide if this is the path that's right for them, and opportunities that it presents for them. So we don't spend a lot of time on the sales pitch. We just try to educate you out to what we do, and allow you guys to determine what's best for your client and work with them to do it. But so far, the agents that have worked with us, and especially the ones whose clients made it, they were calling us all off season. When are you going to add this position? When are you going to add that position? And now that we're at all 22, I can say we have them all. And so we're constantly evaluating. And so send us your guys, and be judicious. If it's really not going to be able to make it to the NFL, we'd appreciate you doing a little preview. But if need be, send us all your clients, and we'll go through the evaluation process. And then ultimately we'll reach back out to you and let you know. And we'll go through all the players that you sent us, who we believe will be on the invitation list, who's on the second wave, and then who we probably won't be inviting. We shoot you straight.
Dean, let's say a player goes to the academy, doesn't get called up by the NFL, but he does take the XFL. What's the pay structure look like there? Does he still owe $21,000? How much comes out of his check, et cetera, et cetera? What's the arrangement here?
I'm glad you circled back on that, Neil, because I didn't mention that when we were talking through the 21 practice squad, 34, roster. And then the XFL is a whole different banana. Because of the partnership, we have a different rate, and obviously the pay scale is not 700,000, like an active roster, but they are going to take and deduct that every 2 weeks that the player's active. So it still follows the same rules. If a kid is hurt, if he's on IR or he's inactive, right, there will be no deduction for that. And the amount is substantially less. It's 13,000, not 21. So then it's broken out over the course of their season. And so they only pay the weeks that they're active. And it's just deducted out of that paycheck, and it's broken down into payments. It's not gouged. There's no chunk pay. So the XFL model is internal. It's a lot easier for those kids. They don't have to deal with the billing and or any of that nature, and it's painless too, because they're getting paid to play pro football. just every 2 weeks, it might be a little less to cover that offset.
I got you.
Now, so they call it, and the XFL is calling it part of their total compensation package. Mm-hmm. So that's why we customize the price points, because the costs are the costs, to run the stadium and the hotel and all that. But we customize the price points with them based on the pay scales of the players, which are not NFL caliber, but they're probably going to be, I don't know exactly. Again, that's an XFL question. But they're following the lead of only charging the kid when he's playing and he's getting the active pay.
What about if someone sends the information in and you decide he's not a candidate? Do you let them know in a timely fashion, or do you just kind of think, do you kind of hold on their information and hope maybe you can plug them in at some time later on?
Like I said, we'll shoot straight. We'll try to get back to everybody within a matter of days, ideally, with an answer one way or another. And some of it might be, hey, these guys were on our list. These guys were not. We need a couple more days to get some, more film looked at and some grading. But these guys are going to be good for the invite list. Or, 4 people are not, going to make it. If you have 8 clients, we tell you, and we don't just let it, fly to the side. If you take the time to reach out, we're going to give you communication.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other questions, guys? What else do you have?
If I have clients who finish their season in the CFL, will they be eligible?
Yeah. The CFL ends in November, so we have a session and a half still going. So our November session number 3 starts November 13th. If they're there still, in Canada, they would be eligible for the last session, which starts December 4th.
Okay.
How much of an emphasis in the academy program is there on special teams? Because I know for a lot of these guys, it's like can help them make a roster if they're better on special teams, or if they can also play long snapper.
So that's an excellent question, because you're right. The more you can do, the longer you can play, right? So, but what we don't do, I said we have all positions. I should have said all 22. We don't you do kickers, punters, or snappers if they're just a snapper. If they're a linebacker snapper or a tight end that snaps, or a running back or wide receiver or DB that catches kicks or punts, we will do those special team periods to give them film and to give them reps at catching kicks. But we don't have kickers and punters and things, so they'll be catching jugs kicks, right? But we give them those opportunities. And if a guy's a snapper, we do the short snap and the long snaps so that they can get film. And then we also have a whole bunch of kicking specialists and special teams coaches that would be available to work, additionally. As far as our relationship with the XFL, obviously they need kickers, punters, and snappers. So if you have a long snapper, which 2 agents have sent in information, I immediately forward all of that to Doug Whaley and his staff with the XFL. As same with quarterbacks and kickers, punters, snappers. We give all that information to the XFL personnel staff, because we're not going to bring those positions in specifically. If they have an ancillary, like if it's a linebacker and he's a snapper, we will give them reps and film them, snapping, and add it to their reports that go to the teams, because again, it's value add, and if it's kids that catches punts or kicks, we'll rep him out and get some film on him. But again, now the team makes a mental note, value add. He's a special team guy. If he's just a special teams demon, we're not going to be hitting. So we, the wedge busting days are over anyway, theoretically. So, but we will make recommendations on the coaches' reports to NFL teams saying could be a team's standout, and might be a rotational guy on defense or standout on teams, or he's outstanding, deep snapper, in addition to being a hand in the ground tight end. So we do promote all the skill sets because we understand the value add for those teams.
Dean, let's say I go to session 1, then I'm put on the PS for 7 weeks. I pay my $3,000 a week. I've completed my $21,000 tuition, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Now, let's say after 7 weeks, I get called up to 53. Now I've got to pay another 13 because now I'm at the 34 rate. Is that correct?
Yes, if it's within 18 months.
Right. Okay.
We have a tail so that it's not never ending.
Right.
And it's always capped, right? So it doesn't start over. It's just it'd be the remaining amount. So
okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay.
That's a legit question.
Okay.
And it's happened. So and we've only been around a couple of years, but we've had most of these scenarios happen.
Okay. All right. So 4 sessions. First session starts October 2nd. Last session ends December 23rd. 21,000 if you get called up to a practice squad. 34 if you get called up 53. You're only paid during this season. The balance doesn't roll over. Everyone that completes the 3 weeks or even accepts it gets an XFL contract, or I guess completes the 3 weeks, gets an XFL contract. They're not obligated to fulfill that XFL contract, but they are given that option. You're on your own to get there, but once you get there, food and lodging are taken care of, as well as instruction with some high-level instructors. I listed a lot of those in the Friday wrap. I don't think Dean needs to run them down again, but they are all top-notch. They are all very good. All 22 positions except specialists are considered. If you apply, send your email to JR and Dean. They'll try to get back to you within 24 to 48 hours to let you know kind of where your player stands. If they're accepted, they'll be given an invitation. And then, of course, the player accepts that in a reasonable amount of time. Everything's going to be in Dallas this year versus Canton last year. Good facilities, not too far from the field. What else? What am I forgetting, Dean? Is that a pretty good summation of things?
Yeah, you did a great job. And ultimately, we're available to communicate and work together. And we strategically can. Like I said, when you're calling teams, if your client is practicing with us, that's a great, easy phone call. It can be quick and efficient and get them, their eyeballs on your client. When you say, hey, they're at the academy, go check out the portal.
Okay. I've put Dean's email address as well as Jeff's in the chat, guys. So make sure you check that out. Jeff, we didn't give you a chance to talk, buddy. Do you have anything to add to tonight's session, man? Jeff, are you still with us?
He's his box is up there.
He's here.
Oh, there, something's moving. There we go. JR, I sucked all the oxygen out of the Zoom meeting here. You want to add anything of intelligence?
It says it's connecting to audio. He may be having some technical difficulties right now.
Okay. So maybe it's a Minnesota thing tonight with the Zoom.
Maybe so. Maybe so. When will you be in Dallas, Dean?
Personally, I'll be down there the week before. I'll be back and forth between, it's coming up. So I'll be down there the week before, and I'll be back and forth once in the interim. We've spent a lot of time, getting teed up on the facilities with our operations team. So we're pretty well set.
I think we have Jeff now. Do we? We have his face. I don't know if we have his voice yet.
It's not with no audio. Oh.
Sorry, Jeff. It wasn't my fault. Maybe Dean cut you off or something, buddy. I don't know. I don't think anyone are tech savvy enough to be able to cut you off. Put it that way.
That's definitely not my skill set. But any of you on board, when you reach out, if you have specific questions, JR and I are happy to address them and fill in the blanks. We're completely transparent on this. It's a program that's gained traction, and it provides a lot of opportunity. We feel like it improves the probability of success. In a, opportunities that are, small percentage of success, we feel like we give these kids a better chance.
Dean, I didn't do a good job of this. Can you run over the number of slots per position per session?
Sure. We have a variable for each one. So there's a plus or minus on each one. O-line, we have 11 slots. Tight ends, 4. Running backs and H-back is 5. Wideouts is 8. 9, excuse me. And then defensively, D-line, so tackles, ends, and edge guys is 12. Linebackers are 4, and then there's a bump for 5. DBs is 9.
Now, you said 11 offensive linemen, I think. Could that be 11 centers? Could it be 11 tackles? I mean, is it broken down by position?
To a degree. But I'll tell you what happens, especially at offensive line. We work to give them versatility, because if they can play multiple spots on the 5, they're going to be more valuable, to the depth charts for a team. So if a guy's just a center, we try to work them, on left or right guard, or it depends on the skill set and the talent. Tackles, we try to get them using both hands, going both directions. So we rep guys out to play and add value, so they can play multiple spots. Same on linebackers. If a guy's got the skill set to be an outside backer, because again, we don't know what scheme they're going back to, right? And nowadays there's a lot of athletes standing up, and moving around in some non-traditional fronts. So we just try to teach football and the technique to be successful at those specific positions. But we want guys to have versatility, because when you're on the bottom of the roster, the more you can do. That's why we emphasize special team skills, even though we don't practice special teams.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if no one else has any more questions, I don't. Again, I put Dean's and Jeff's email addresses in the chat. Make sure you pick that up before we get off here, before you leave. I'm going to try to have this uploaded to our YouTube page at least by tomorrow, and I'll probably put the link out there on our Twitter whenever I get it done. So if you want to review this or anything along those lines, then you can do that then. Again, you can reach out to Dean or Jeff whenever you want to via email. If you have questions, reach out to me as well. I'm going to be kind of an informal ambassador for the Alumni Academy this year. And so anyway, we're all at your service. And any way we can help any of the three of us, that's kind of why we're here. Any last words, Dean?
No, when you reach out, we'll give you, we can offer you some more information and handle specific questions as well. And again, we mentioned they did a little TV show and the partnership with the XFL. Dwayne Johnson goes on late night talk shows and he's, promoting, our academy and things. We were, that quiet kept secret the first couple of years as we got ourselves established. And now that we're expanding and growing, there's an awareness level out there. So now if you need to get straight answers, don't buy into what you hear, ask us directly.
Okay. All right. Y'all didn't get to hear from Jeff tonight, but you will get to hear from him in our newsletter this weekend. He's going to be the subject of our catching up on the Friday wrap. So we'll if he has any comments with him, we'll give him some space to put him in there. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for dealing with our technical difficulties and your patience throughout all this. I hope everyone got their questions answered. And if you didn't, you know where I am. You know how to reach me. Everyone have a wonderful evening. And thanks again for joining us. Good night.